Welcome to Lilac Dance.
A podcast by two disabled people about processing emotions and creative expression.
My name is Elena, and I am a white woman with brown eyes and shoulder length, brown hair, and blonde highlights, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt with white around the collar and around the sleeves.
And my name is Heather, and I'm a white person with strawberry blonde hair, with diamond-like earrings, and a pink halter top.
Nice. So I think we wanted to record this episode today just to talk a little bit about my grad school adventure so far.
So, Elena, I want to know, what is your grad school program, and how did you decide that that was the right program for you?
Yeah, so I'm doing the Master's in Social Work program at the University of Michigan. I decided, I considered a lot of different potential paths in life after because I started in undergrad as a music major. I was a violin performance major. During the pandemic, though, I had a little, I think I was talking about this in the last episode, a little pandemic quarter life crisis where I realized that was not what I wanted to do professionally. So I took a year after I finished undergrad, just to kind of decide what did I want to do. And I considered special education for a little bit because I knew I really liked working with kids. But after working in a school for a year, what I realized was that I really was interested in working with kids on emotions and on that side of things. And so that was kind of how I decided to go into social work, because I was just really interested in helping people, especially kids, and working with the brain and with emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think when you think about emotional wellness, I think social work is at the forefront of my mind of professionals that are going to help you navigate your emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And as discussed in the last episode, you do have a learning disability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just curious, what it's like entering a grad program with your learning disability, both like the process of starting school and orientation, but also what it's like on the side of professors.
Yeah, it's been really interesting so far just because the School of Social Work seems like a unique section of the overall university in that it is acceptable to talk about having a disability. And that's really refreshing because that hasn't always been my experience in other parts of the university.
Wow.
So it's really nice to just be able to be open about that and not be looked at like, what are you saying, like when I talk about having a disability. So that's been great. The professors, it's been wonderful because not only do the professors, openly say, like, if you need an accommodation, come talk to us, which makes a
Good.
huge difference. Like, just to have that invitation be directly said rather than like having to, go to their office hours and wonder if they're gonna make fun of you or because
Right.
that's happened. I'm not in their office hours, but I've had professors say very unkind things about people with disabilities, like in the classroom. And then you just think like, well, how am I going to be comfortable approaching this professor about accommodations if this is what they're saying about disabled people, like in front of the whole class? So I was really glad that there seems to be a lot more sensitivity in that area, from a broader perspective as well. I think the professors have structured their classes in ways that maybe are a little bit more flexible and a little bit more accommodating. There's a lot more like take home tests rather than like
Wow.
timed assignments, or the option to kind of choose the format of your assignment rather than saying like everyone needs to like write a paper, which I love writing papers, but not everybody has the kind of brain that works well for that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more like understanding that everybody might need something different. So that's been really nice.
I'm really glad to hear that. And I know that your, experience in undergrad was a lot different. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the differences between music school and social work school.
Yes. Very different. There were wonderful professors in the School of Music who did care about, a lot of social issues and social identities and disability. There were people who did care about those things, and I'm so grateful to them in the music school. I think in the School of Social Work, though, it's more normalized to take those things into consideration, that that's the
Okay.
default rather than the exception. And I think, in terms of just the dynamics between students, it just is made a lot different by the fact that um, in social work, it kind of is more that everyone benefits from everyone being successful because we all have a shared goal of, you know, implementing change, whether that be in individuals, in society as a whole, in communities. We all have this shared goal and in a lot of cases shared values. And so I think that really helps
Mm.
just to have a more collaborative approach to
Yeah.
things within the School of Social Work rather than, being in a class with a bunch of other people and knowing that you're all going to be trying to beat each other out for the same one seat in an orchestra in 4 years, so it's
Yeah.
definitely feels different.
That's crazy to think that music school, instead of being about the joy of music, it became about the competition of being good at music.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there are some people who would tell you like, "Oh, it's not competitive, like, we all just get along great," but I think there's a lot that happens under the surface.
Yeah.
It's not, that necessarily people are, like, going on stage and having, like, a, violin off to see, like, who can do the fastest scales, although, that's not so far from the truth, but, like,
Wow. Yeah.
it sometimes it is kind of like just this thing that's there that nobody really ever wants to talk about. But we all know it's happening. We all know we're comparing ourselves to other people. And, a lot of the structure of how music school works sort of contributes to that. Like in an orchestra, in a university, and honestly, like even like middle schools too. When I think about this, it's kind of like wild to me to think about this, but every person is ranked by seat based on how well they played in the audition. So the person who's in like the first chair is like the one who did the best, and then the person who's in the second
Wow.
chair like is like the second best, and it goes all the way back. And there's even like a last seat. So like that person has to be like sitting there all year long thinking like, oh, well,
There's the one
everyone knows I
audition.
was
This
the
is how I
worst one.
did.
Yeah, exactly. Which they're not the worst one. It's just this one
Wow.
audition. But like,
Wow.
yeah, so there's just a lot of competition that's emphasized in music school that definitely is different in social work school.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're in social work school now and not like a graduate music program. I mean, maybe there are some good ones out there, but it's just nice to hear that you're in a more collaborative setting.
Yes. And I think, for people who really want to do that, that's their like goal is to be a professional musician. Like they might really enjoy a graduate music program, and that's amazing. And I think that
Right.
some people find ones that work really well for them. But I did not find it to be a super accommodating setting for someone with a learning disability
Right.
or for someone who started their instrument a little bit later. So I'm glad I'm at
Wow.
social work school now.
And so speaking of like accommodations, um, you're gonna do a field placement at some
Yeah.
point, and I'm very curious to know like what is that and like how in a real world setting outside of being a student, how might your learning disability impact that and like what barriers might you face with the field placements?
Yeah. So a field placement basically is like an internship. Um although it's like an internship but it's not paid.
Oh
So
no.
we're trying to there's a student group that's trying to work on changing that, and I've gotten involved with them a little bit. But um so basically it's like a job that you have that's kind of um related to and counting towards your studies towards in the degree. So different people will have different internship placements or different field placements depending on like what their main area of study is, or what their pathway is, which is like in the School of Social Work there are a number of different pathways that you can choose, which is like an area of focus. So my pathway is interpersonal practice with a certificate in school social work. So it's like
Oh,
doing
very
like
cool.
one-on-one individual therapy, but also working towards that school certificate. So I'm doing a little bit of two things kind of, but there's also like community organizing and community change is one of the pathways. That might not be what it's called. It's something like that. Community change, community organizing. I know it has those words in it. And then there's program evaluation, which is like the more like research side of things. There's the welfare of children and families, which is like working with kids, maybe more oriented towards like the broader like systemic change, or working with systems, rather than like maybe just one-on-one individual therapy. Older adult, the taking care of older adults in a social work context.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I got all of them. But yeah. So no, policy and political social work is the last one. All right.
Cool.
Anyway, so there your internship will kind of have to do with what pathway you choose, and there are different placements that are open to different pathways. So that's definitely something that's taken into account. But in talking to a lot of my classmates, and I know that this was something I was really concerned about before I got my driver's license, when I didn't know I was necessarily going to be going into grad school being able to drive, which I'm really glad that I am, but I didn't necessarily know that was going to happen for me. So I think a lot of people are finding that they're wanting to do these programs that are focused on work, in a different city than Ann Arbor. A lot of the time, like there's one that specifically focuses on doing work in Detroit that people apply for that specific program and they got accepted to. But they aren't able to drive, or they don't have a car or something like that.
Wow.
And I know a lot of people are really concerned about how they're gonna handle the transportation thing. And I know that was something I was concerned about too before I could drive. So I think, and that relates to learning disabilities because, learning disabilities affect whether or not people can drive. They affect, sense of direction, stuff like that. So that's one thing that's a potential barrier. I think also just knowing that, for me personally, knowing that I'm going to have to explain my learning disability to some kind of organization or agency that may or may not be understanding, may or may not be informed. And I don't know what that agency is yet. I haven't gotten my placement, but just knowing that I am going to have to explain that because there are mistakes that I could make that could be a result of my learning disability, especially if I am having to deal with any of the like bookkeeping, like insurance, like handling money side of being in a private practice situation or something like that, whatever organization it is. That's definitely something I'm going to have to explain. And I'm a little nervous about that too. So we'll see.
Wow. Well, I really hope eventually that your placement goes well. And I hope that we can talk more about it when it's happening.
Yeah, definitely can update you on that one.
So what are you looking forward to now, maybe in your first year?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to because I think my classes are going to be really fun. This is so specific, but there's this one assignment that I'm just so excited for in one of my classes.
Oh, yeah?
The assignment is to choose a fictional character and write out a script for a therapy session with that character, like how it would go. And I just think that's like the cutest thing. Like, I love it. So I've been having a lot of fun, like brainstorming about that. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. There's so many options. And then later on, there's a similar assignment, but it's with like a public figure, which definitely could get interesting. But yeah, so I'm excited for that. And that whole class in general just seems really cool. So I think that'll be fun. And I think I will also be excited to do a field placement, and I will be even more excited once everything gets like worked out and all the logistical stuff gets taken care of. Because right now we're all just kind of freaking out, like, what do we do?
Right.
What do we fill out? Like,
so many unknowns.
Yes.
Wow. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share in regards to starting social work graduate school?
I mean, I think I'm just really excited. I'm also really excited to be, going into a field where hopefully I can help people, in a lot of different ways, both like on an individual level, but also I'm really hoping that the work that I'm doing in my like disability advocacy will tie into a social work career. And so I'm really excited for that possibility as well.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's about it, but thanks for listening.
Thank you all. Goodbye.